I do not agree with things that he does. I do not agree with his attitudes.
Did Kody Brown just expose the one secret Robyn has spent 14 years trying to hide? Because in one careless moment, one tiny detail he thought made him look like a devoted father actually exposed everything. Kody told a story about trying to leave the house, just to visit another one of his wives, while little Ari clung to his leg, screaming. And what did Robyn do? She refused to help. She told him to wait. And that moment, right there, is the part Robyn desperately wishes he never said out loud. Because what Kody accidentally revealed was the truth viewers have suspected for years. Ari's panic didn't come from nowhere. It came from a household where Kody's presence is treated like a rare artifact, something to be guarded, rationed, and weaponized. He thought he was sharing a cute, fatherhood is hard story. Instead, he exposed how he stopped being a plural husband the moment he married Robyn. He exposed why the older kids faded out of his life while Robyn's kids became his entire universe. He exposed the emotional environment Robyn built, one where a child melting down controls the entire family's schedule. And the wildest part? Kody genuinely believed this story reflected well on him. He still doesn't realize it was the moment the mask slipped. So what was the secret Robyn was trying to protect? And how much damage has this one confession caused? Let's break it wide open. Kody Brown rarely offers unfiltered truth, but when he does, it tends to spill out with all the subtlety of a falling piano. His recent confession, detailing how he attempted to leave the house to visit one of his other wives while a distraught Ari clung to his leg, wasn't the sympathetic, "fatherhood is hard" vignette he seemed to imagine. Instead, it served as an accidental exposé of the family power dynamics everyone has been watching play out for more than a decade. He recounted pleading with Robyn to intervene. She reportedly declined, insisting that the child was merely expressing herself and that he would have to wait. The revelation that he felt compelled to explain to Robyn that another mommy and other kids also required his attention was almost touching, if it weren't such a bleak reminder that he hasn't acted on that concept in years. His surprise at Ari's meltdown only confirms what viewers have suspected. The child's dependency didn't emerge organically. It flourished in an environment where Kody's presence is treated as a sacred artifact, and any attempt to remove it is treated as a crisis. The moment also undermined Robyn's carefully curated image as the long-suffering, polygamy-affirming peacemaker. Since entering the family in 2010, unemployed and armed with a spiritual marriage, she positioned herself not merely as an additional wife, but as the central wife. The fourth wife title was decorative. Functionally, she became the lead spouse, absorbing Kody's time, energy, and, eventually, all shared resources. The now-defunct jewelry venture, enthusiastically pitched as her contribution to the family, became yet another financial sinkhole. Meanwhile, the original three wives were left supporting a household structure that increasingly served only one corner of the plural marriage. Robyn's long-running narrative of victimhood is particularly rich, given her role in fracturing the family she claims never embraced her. The irony is almost theatrical. She laments that her children weren't welcomed, yet she was instrumental in cultivating the distance, insisting on moves that destabilized the entire brood, discouraging mingling with the older kids, and rationing hospitality as though it were a precious resource. She worried aloud that her children might notice if their older siblings failed to send birthday cards, conveniently overlooking the year she and Kody forgot Gabe's birthday entirely. On that memorable occasion, Kody phoned his son, not to celebrate him, but to monologue about his own minor ailments, never managing to mention the actual reason for the day. Kody's pandemic-era behavior made the favoritism impossible to ignore. While proclaiming rigid rules about family separation, he simply abandoned communication with his older children. His explanation, that they didn't need him anymore, was an elegant way of masking resentment and neglect as paternal logic. Truly and Savannah were part of the cohort he claimed to be protecting, yet he barely acknowledged them. Loyalty, it appeared, mattered more than paternity. The story he and Robyn attempted to present of a devoted father hindered by a sensitive child backfired. It confirmed that he rarely left Robyn's house and that Ari's distress was not an isolated incident, but a predictable result of a child taught that her emotional collapse could dictate her father's movements. The dynamic isn't merely unhealthy, it's manipulative. It grants a young child the illusion of control while ensuring she never develops the coping tools she actually needs. Yet Robyn seemed incensed that Kody shared the anecdote at all, likely because it exposed a truth she has spent 14 years massaging into irrelevance. The pattern extends beyond emotional management. When family tragedies occurred, such as the death of Janelle's mother, Ari's need for Kody was treated as a competing obligation. His return home after a brief quarantine was greeted with wartime dramatics, showcasing a household culture built around performative dependence. The same household, incidentally, that discouraged open-door relationships with the rest of the family, whether by limiting visits, rationing food, or orchestrating the infamous move to Flagstaff that scattered the family further and funneled yet more collective wealth into one household. Financially, the consolidation has been stunning. Years of cooperative labor and joint property ventures eventually funneled into the hands of two people. Even the land at Coyote Pass reflects an imbalance disguised as equality. Kody's name appears on every parcel, but the distribution of investment, labor, and benefit is far from symmetrical. Should the original three wives ever pursue legal action, the behind-the-scenes footage would be a documentary filmmaker's dream. Kody's habitual excuses, too tired, too stressed, too hindered by a crying child to fulfill commitments elsewhere, further underline how thoroughly the family culture transformed after 2010. Janelle herself recalled pointing out that he could rest just as well in her home as in Robyn's. The fact that such reminders were even necessary speaks volumes. Ultimately, the most revealing part of Kody's anecdote was not the image of a child clinging to his leg. It was the realization that he believed this story reflected well on him. In attempting to justify his absence, he inadvertently confirmed it. In defending Robyn's intentions, he exposed her strategy. And in lamenting the difficulty of stretching himself among multiple households, he demonstrated how thoroughly he stopped trying. A substantial reckoning is coming for him, though it may arrive long after he realizes the other mommy and kids he once cited so earnestly no longer wait for him at all. Here's the real story behind that so-called loyalty Kody keeps bragging about. Kody Brown's proclamation of gratitude for his 8-year-old daughter's loyalty in the wake of his divorce is a masterclass in self-infatuation. Only someone deeply committed to their own mythology could look at a child parroting adult conflict and interpret it as a meaningful show of allegiance. The remark exposes a worldview built on arrogance, pettiness, and an expectation that everyone, up to and including elementary schoolers, must validate his grievances. The more troubling question is why a child this young knows not only that Christine left, but the emotional script attached to it. The family could have shared a neutral explanation and moved on, yet the narrative clearly runs deeper, fed directly from the adults who benefit from her repeating it. Kody, ever eager to cast himself as the wounded party, eagerly accepts her mimicry as proof of devotion. Victimhood is not merely his fallback position, it is his favored identity. Meanwhile, the insistence that children shouldn't know about adult issues collapses the moment those same children announce that they hate Christine or urge her to have dates. Such declarations do not emerge spontaneously from young minds. They require coaching. The professed boundary between adult conflict and child awareness exists only when convenient. The irony is staggering. These children are allegedly too sheltered to know their own siblings well, yet somehow fully briefed on who left whom and whom they are expected to despise. The double standard reveals more about the parents than the children. It is no wonder some adult children have chosen distance to protect their own families from that environment. Kody's comment that Ariella's reaction reflects loyalty shared by others in the family only deepens the absurdity. Either he genuinely believes devotion is measured by how convincingly someone echoes his resentments, or he imagines that estranged children oppose him out of the same blind loyalty, just directed toward their mothers. Neither interpretation reflects emotional maturity. His approach to family dynamics resembles high school clique politics, complete with whispered alliances and performative outrage. This mentality also explains the repeated claims of alienation. Older children who refuse to indulge his self-pity become cast as disloyal antagonists, allowing him to retreat once again into the role of martyr. The pattern is predictable, tiresome, and harmful. Robyn's contributions to this atmosphere cannot be overlooked. When a parent announces on camera that certain siblings just don't want to see the others for the holiday, one can only imagine what is said when filming stops. The children absorb these cues with precision, growing into the exact worldview being modeled for them. Victimhood is not merely present, it is cultivated. The result is a household where loyalty is not earned, but extracted, where narratives are shaped to suit adult egos, and where the youngest members are deployed as emotional props. And the most disturbing part is how proudly it is all presented. Here's what no one wants to admit about Robyn Brown. She didn't join a plural family. She staged a quiet takeover. Robyn Brown's worldview functions on a remarkably simple operating system. Whatever she wants is a sacred emotional truth, and whatever anyone else wants is a personal attack. Her defense of Ariella's meltdown over Kody leaving, framed as a child's noble right to express herself, is presented with touching tenderness. Strangely, that compassion was nowhere to be found when the older children, who had already spent years watching their father vanish into yet another household, reacted with far less theatrics to the announcement of yet another baby siphoning his time and attention. Their feelings, apparently, were not the kind worth validating. The pattern is tedious in its predictability. As the last wife to join the family, Robyn demanded enthusiastic acceptance of her own needs while treating everyone else's as inconvenient background noise. She positioned herself not as part of a large, plural family, but as the rightful matriarch of it, expecting her children to outrank the original 13, and interpreting any deviation from that fantasy as a personal slight. Even polite neutrality offended her. When teenage faces failed to radiate enough delight at news that directly translated to less time with their father and fewer resources, she regarded it as a moral failing grave enough to critique. Her competitive streak extended beyond emotional territory. She openly bristled when Gabriel announced he'd defer to Christine for Thanksgiving plans. Hardly a betrayal, unless one believes all roads must lead to Robyn. The punishment for such disloyalty was swift. He was quietly exiled from Christmas under the guise of being unsafe, a convenient label that doubled as a loyalty test. The contradictions only multiply. Robyn freely disappeared for 3 weeks to be at the birth of McKelty's twins, yet the idea of Kody leaving Ariella for even a few days was treated as unthinkable. The explanation was delivered with a straight face. Kody cannot possibly leave Robyn's children, despite the fact that a nanny, not Robyn, handles most of the actual child-rearing. But he can attend a friend's wedding, provided no other wife is present to remind anyone that a plural family ever existed. Even Ariella's distress, genuine, understandable, age-appropriate, became another vehicle for Robyn's selective empathy. Any other wife would have helped a child navigate the normal emotions that come with sharing a father in a plural household. Every other wife did exactly that for years. Yet, Robyn insists her experience is unprecedented, her hardship unparalleled, her pedestal eternally justified. The result is a portrait not of a devoted mother or beleaguered spouse, but of someone who treats a plural marriage as a hierarchy she should sit atop, enforcing loyalty, demanding deference, and rewriting the rules to suit her own comfort. The tragedy is not that she fails to see her hypocrisy, it's how thoroughly she expects everyone else to accommodate it. Never assume the favorite wife is the gracious one, especially when the grocery money tells a different story. Janelle's recent candor deserves its own standing ovation, if only because it finally punctures the long-running fantasy that Robyn's home was a haven of open arms and even more open hospitality. The revelation that Janelle's children were scolded for daring to approach the refrigerator, complete with the now infamous sign, puts an abrupt end to the myth of boundless warmth. Evidently, the welcome mat stopped precisely where the grocery budget began. The sudden honesty is particularly striking, given how carefully measured Janelle's public tone has always been. For years, she functioned as the model plural marriage partner. Steady, diplomatic, the one most suited to keeping the peace while others bristled openly. Even when Christine voiced criticisms of Kody and Robyn, Janelle remained circumspect, quietly hoping that a détente might be salvaged if the relationship with her children could be repaired. That restraint has evaporated. This season, she dispenses with euphemism and calls out what everyone else has been tiptoeing around, from the refrigerator policing to the unmissable display of poor parenting. Freed from contractual obligations that once kept every grievance carefully packaged, the original wives are finally telling the truth about life behind the curated facade. It has the unmistakable feeling of a jackpot hitting. Years of implied tension now confirmed in plain language. And while Robyn once claimed her home was a safe and welcoming place, the irony is now impossible to ignore. Her children were never barred from food in the other households. Quite the opposite, judging by certain well-documented buffet habits. Yet her own kitchen operated under a regime of scarcity, locks, and pointed reprimands. The larger issue, of course, is Robyn's persistent detachment from the financial reality of a shared household. Grocery money, despite her apparent belief to the contrary, is not conjured from thin air. A family pot requires contribution, not just withdrawal, a point that seems to have eluded her entirely. There is, however, a lingering disappointment beneath the satisfaction of finally hearing the truth. These conversations should have happened years ago, on camera, in real time. Janelle's children deserved an advocate willing to confront the inequities as they unfolded, not only after the fact. She should have challenged the dynamics sooner and more decisively. Still, belated honesty is better than perpetual silence, and her newfound willingness to name the dysfunction marks a long overdue shift from diplomacy to truth-telling, one refrigerator sign at a time. Here's why the nanny proved COVID was never the real problem in that house. the household's infamous nanny remains the most unintentionally revealing character in the entire saga. Somehow, Kody and Robyn managed to present her presence during the height of COVID as both essential and entirely compatible with their self-declared hyper-cautious isolation protocols. Protocols strict enough to keep Kody away from his own children, yet apparently flexible enough to welcome a non-family employee through the front door. At the time of the nanny's grand debut, the two youngest children were 10 and 5. Only one truly required supervision, and the home was already stocked with an impressive roster of available adults, multiple unemployed grown family members, and more than one older teen. Yet a nanny was deemed indispensable. The arithmetic alone destroys the narrative. Nothing about the arrangement suggests medical caution. Everything about it suggests selective conviction. Theories have flourished attempting to make this choice appear rational. One charitable interpretation reframes the nanny as a special needs tutor, repackaged with a softer title. A more elegant story, certainly. But even that version collapses when weighed against the family's own behavior. Virtual instruction was readily available. Kody himself pushed Brianna into online school specifically to keep her home, a courtesy that mysteriously never extended to Isabel or Gwendolyn. The selective application of safety measures was not just obvious, it was policy. Under the couple's apocalyptic rhetoric about viral exposure, one would assume any outsider, tutor, nanny, or otherwise, would be the first to go. Instead, the nanny stayed while entire branches of the family tree were cut off in the name of survival. If marital bonds, parental relationships, and children's emotional well-being were not worth the perceived risk, it is hard to imagine that educational support for the youngest somehow was. Christine, of course, did voice the question that laid the hypocrisy bare. What does the nanny do? It was not merely a quip, but a diagnosis, identifying the contradiction that defined the household's pandemic policies. Small wonder the couple bristled at her candor. Nothing exposes a contradiction faster than someone refusing to politely ignore it. Here's the uncomfortable truth about those overly affectionate moments with Robyn's kids. Robyn Brown's greatest masterstroke has never been a tearful monologue, a carefully timed meltdown, or even her uncanny ability to center herself in any crisis. No. Her most quietly nefarious achievement has been the sustained, meticulously engineered campaign to present her children as Kody Brown's most adoring, loyal, and demonstratively affectionate offspring, long before reality supported the narrative. The pattern appeared early. During the anthropologist's visit in Season 8, Aurora, already in her preteen or early teen years, casually settled into Kody's lap. Nothing inappropriate, merely jarring. None of the other children, particularly at that age, behaved this way. Yet Robyn's children seemed trained to perform a very specific brand of exaggerated closeness. From the earliest episodes, these displays materialized. Children who barely knew Kody clinging to him, lobbying for adoption, dissolving into panic attacks, or, more recently, physically wrapping themselves around him to prevent his departure. A viewer could mistake it for emotional intimacy. It read far more like choreography. The message was unmistakable. These were the children who loved Kody the most. Devotion as competitive sport. For the original 13 children, the spectacle must have been excruciating. Imagine watching step-siblings drape themselves over your father with the intensity of a Victorian deathbed scene, while you, an actual child of the man, are scolded for insufficient enthusiasm. Not inappropriate, but eerily overproduced, as if someone needed a visual contrast to underscore who was loyal and who wasn't. This strategy became the earliest wedge between Kody and the OG-13. It did not create his favoritism, but it certainly accelerated it. Of course, Kody himself has always responded warmly to very young children. Isabel, for example, was affectionate with him in her early years. There's a conversation in which Kody, Christine, and Isabel discuss how she was sweet to him and even to Mary, but not particularly to Christine. He reliably dotes on his children until they age out of the "daddy is everything" phase. Once childhood adoration fades and an independent opinion appears, his interest wanes. If he isn't being worshipped, he sees little incentive to adapt his parenting to anything more reciprocal. This makes the manufactured loyalty of Robyn's children extraordinarily useful to him. Their constant displays of attachment conveniently reaffirm his favorite delusion, that devotion equates to worthiness. Plenty of viewers remember other kids seeking comfort with various adults. Mary, for instance, often had children curled into her side despite the popular narrative that none of them liked her. Yet, in recent episodes, even Janelle notes that Kody allowed Robyn's children's clinginess to disrupt the rotational schedule, a tacit acknowledgement that the emotional theatrics had tangible consequences for the whole family. Then, there are the symbolic gestures, the kind that say more than any confessional interview ever could. Robyn's revisionist portrait, where Christine's children were quietly erased and replaced with her own, stands as one of her more pointed acts, a targeted maneuver dressed as family unity. Mary lacked the numbers to cause trouble, and Janelle certainly wouldn't tolerate the insult. Christine, however, made an easy casualty. The pattern stretches back to the beginning. In Season 1, before the wedding, Robyn coached little Brianna during a photo discussion. Brianna identified Kody correctly by name. Robyn immediately forced a correction. "Who?" The child dutifully repeated, "Daddy." This was before they were legally or spiritually unified, and while Brianna's biological father remained part of her life. Encouraging closeness is one thing. Erasing a child's existing reality is quite another. In hindsight, that infamous drawing of Kody surrounded exclusively by Robyn's children feels less bizarre and more inevitable. It reflects the larger project, rewriting history, reshaping dynamics, and recentering the family narrative so completely that any previous truth is treated as an inconvenient rumor. The great tragedy of the Brown family is not simply that it fractured. It's how deliberately some of the fractures were drawn. Here's what no one wants to admit about this so-called family patriarch. What a triumph of character selection. The man publicly announces that he just needed his first wife, mother of one of his children no less, to go away, then behaves mystified when those same children decline to bask in his presence. Only one person seems unbothered by his ongoing demolition of every woman who ever trusted him. Robyn, who might want to keep her guard up. Favoritism in this household ages about as well as his hairline, which is steadily retreating into a full-scale exodus. Not a single redeeming sentiment escapes his perpetually flapping mouth. The spectacle of a father repeatedly minimizing his children's mother, on television, for sport, would be hard for any child to stomach. And watching a spouse verbally dismantle every other wife while assuring one woman she's the favorite is hardly comforting. Favoritism exists only when there are competitors left to rank. The children's reactions are written all over their faces. They've watched their mothers dismissed, belittled, and reimagined as obstacles rather than partners. The repeated message is clear. He needs them out of his way, but their financial contributions may remain. Thank you very much. His irritation with Mary seems especially sharp whenever she succeeds independently. Running a business without allowing him to siphon off the rewards is apparently an unforgivable offense. Control is the real currency here. He dictates who comes, who stays, who goes, and then hides behind a religion he no longer practices to justify his refusal to assume responsibility. The marriages, he claims, are unbreakable for him, but curiously breakable for everyone else. And while he solemnly insists he cannot leave a union, he also refuses to participate in the formal process that would free Mary, lest he face questions from church leadership. Apparently, accountability is more terrifying than national humiliation. His treatment of Mary, in particular, is needlessly cruel. Declaring he should never have married her after spending the majority of their lives together isn't honesty. It's bullying dressed up as revelation. The children heard it. The world heard it. And still, he sidesteps any ownership of his role. Instead, he broadcasts every grievance to a national audience, while protecting only one thing with unwavering devotion: those brittle, over-processed curls perched atop his head. It's the behavior of a profoundly insecure man who needs someone weaker to push down in order to stand tall. And the tragedy is that he seems to believe the performance is convincing anyone but himself. Subscribe.